It began with a letter. Melissa Carter opened her mailbox one Tuesday morning to find a violation notice stamped in red. $250 fine. Incorrect door color. Her door was beige, but according to HOA President Karen Whitmore, it was the wrong beige. Desert sand, not Sahara dune, Karen declared, sunglasses perched like a crown. Rules are rules. Melissa stared at the two shades, unsure why she hadn't noticed the difference before. They were so close. Desert sand was a hair lighter, but how was she supposed to know? The paint store had discontinued Sahara Dune 5 years ago. And besides, who cared what color the door was as long as it was neutral and in good repair? Well, apparently Karen did. By week's end, the cul-de-sac was a rainbow of protest: neon pink, lime green, electric blue. When the local news arrived, Karen couldn't even tell the two beige swatches apart on live TV. "They're violating the sanctity of our neighborhood," Karen told the reporter, waving her manicured hand dismissively. "The rest of us have worked too hard to maintain our property values." Her neighbor, Barry White, had put up his feet. "I've got my freedom of speech," he said, gesturing at his sky-blue door. "And besides, if she wants a beige door, why not just let her paint it beige?" But Karen wasn't having it. She stood in front of her pristine white door, arms crossed. "Sahara Dune is beige, people. It's a rule." Everyone wanted to be an enforcer. Karen's daughter, Candace, doled out punishment by slapping Post-its on violators' doors. $250 fine, please remit by Friday. Candace was studying criminal justice in college. This was her internship. But not everyone was fighting back. A few residents cowered under the tyranny of beige, rushing to scrape and repaint their doors, some for the second time. One woman, Mrs. Periwinkle, lived alone. Her late husband had painted their door a cheery yellow when they moved in. She didn't have the money to pay the fines, so she scraped away the yellow paint until the beige primer showed through. When her friends came to comfort her, tears streaming down her face, she said, "There's no point complaining. You can't fight City Hall, especially when City Hall is your next-door neighbor." By Thursday afternoon, all the doors on Melissa's block were either white or beige, except for hers. She sat on her porch steps, staring at the paint chips. The sun glinted off something in her mailbox, a tiny gold star. She felt her pulse quicken. Could it be? No, it was just another violation notice. Only this one read, $500 fine, failure to comply. Melissa threw herself on the sofa. How could she win a war that she wasn't even sure she wanted to fight? She missed the old days when the worst thing anyone worried about was the neighbor's sprinkler spraying onto your lawn. Now she was trapped in a colorless world where the enemy was beige. She didn't know it yet, but help was on the way. Enter Rachel, a ferocious consumer rights attorney whose motto was, "Sue first, ask questions later." Well, not exactly. That was her secretary's motto. Rachel's motto was more along the lines of, settle out of court, get paid, and go to lunch. But when Melissa told her story, Rachel knew she had a ringer. First, she took care of the emotional damage. "You need to put that back on your door," she told Melissa, pointing at the offending swatch. "You're not a bad person, Melissa. And being a bad person is grounds for a lawsuit. Just don't move until we hear back from our experts. We're going to make them tear up every rule book, every can of paint, everything." When the summons arrived, Karen's eyes popped. It was the first one she'd ever gotten that wasn't for speeding or parking tickets. She passed it around the HOA meeting like a bad potato. Everyone was shocked. They'd never heard of a lawyer who specialized in homeowner association disputes. What's she want? We were just trying to uphold the rules. All we did was slap a little fine on her. Surely she doesn't want to sue over that. There's no money in it for her. She has to be crazy. Candace reached out and patted her mother's hand. "Don't worry, Mom. I already took care of it. My professor said we can use real cases in our mediation class, so I just told him it's a class project. He's got his team working on it pro bono. We'll have her settled in no time." But somehow the settlement didn't stick. Every time Candace and her team thought they had it sewn up, Melissa would pull out a new card. First, they offered to drop the fine. She wanted the whole thing expunged from the minutes. Then they offered to change the door color rule to any neutral shade. She wanted it completely removed. Then they offered to let her keep her door desert sand if she agreed to stop painting her mailbox turquoise. Finally, they offered her a full refund of the fine and free paint. She countered with free lifetime paint and a written apology from Karen. Then they offered to let her choose the next door color. That was too much, even for Melissa. She'd won. Karen stormed into the HOA office. Why didn't they just pick a different color? Why did they have to pick on me? Before Candace could answer, Melissa walked in, a big smile on her face. She waved a paint chip in front of Karen's face. How about this one? Isn't it lovely? I call it Karma Chameleon. As the chapter opens, a title card reads, 1 year later. Melissa Carter stepped out of her house, admiring her prize-winning petunias. Across the street, Candace was hanging a new sign on her house. She paused when she saw Melissa staring and hurried to hide it. Melissa walked over. What's that? She asked. Candace blushed. I'm going to law school now. Criminal justice, remember? Oh, I remember, Melissa said. She looked at the sign. So is that why you have this? Candace sighed. Mom says we're never going to agree on door colors, so I gave up. The sign read, room to rent, clean, quiet, responsible only. No parties or unregistered vehicles. References required. Melissa smiled. That's a relief. I was afraid you might have joined the witness protection program. Candace laughed. Funny. You haven't changed the color yet. I bet you're still waiting for the perfect shade. I think I found it, Melissa said. She took a step back to admire it. It was a wonderful shade of beige. Later that day, Karen stormed into the HOA office. Why didn't they pick a different color? Why did they have to pick on me? Before Candace could answer, Melissa walked in, a big smile on her face. She waved a paint chip in front of Karen's face. How about this one? Isn't it lovely? I call it Karma Chameleon. At the far end of the table, a man with a name tag reading Ted Note Taker wrote furiously. Motion to strike the word beige from the bylaws fails. Seconded, Karen Whitmore. Opposed, none. Abstain, Barry. What are you doing, Barry? Karen whispered, leaning toward him. You promised. Barry shrugged. I can't believe we spent hundreds of dollars on an attorney to tell us this. I think we needed this, Candace said, beaming. I learned so much in mediation class. You guys really taught me well. Karen threw her hands up in the air. Fine. What else do you want? Let the girl paint her door purple. Who cares? A slow clap started at the other end of the table and grew until the whole room was clapping. Bravo, Ted said, standing up. A standing ovation for the first non-beige door in Sun City West. As everyone filed out of the meeting, Melissa found herself face to face with Karen. You got what you wanted, Karen said, surprised by a hint of admiration in her voice. Your door is beige. Melissa smiled mysteriously. Oh, you'll see. Outside, the first drops of rain fell. Melissa raced home to open the windows and grab a paint roller. Tonight, she would paint her door. 8-year-old Emma Lopez had a great idea. She was going to set up a lemonade stand and make some money so she could buy her very own pair of roller skates. But first, she needed approval from the neighborhood HOA. And this was going to be a tough one because the HOA was not happy with the new neighbor. Karen swooped in. Unlicensed business. HOA Code 14B. Shut it down. Emma cried. The whole neighborhood snapped. They couldn't believe that Karen would ruin a little girl's dream of having a lemonade stand. So by morning, every single driveway in the neighborhood had a lemonade stand. It was like a yellow and red sea of rebellion. All the houses were doing it, even the retirees on their porch in their underwear making sweet tea. There wasn't even enough lemons in the city to keep up with all the stands. Word got around and the local news showed up and they started interviewing people. Why are you doing this? 'Cause it's hot. But what about the HOA rules? We don't care. The mayor even showed up to buy a cup of lemonade and he said, "This is the spirit of community." Then he took a big chug. "Actually, I have a bigger problem to solve," he said, handing the cup back. "What's that?" "There's no cups. This is terrible." Then at the next HOA meeting, Karen tried to speak, but she was drowned out by the chant of "Lemonade, lemonade, lemonade." The board had to put the gavel down and they voted to protect lemonade stands throughout the summer. And we move on to the next recovered memory. It's Karen's diary. Here we go. Entry, July 12th. Today, the child's lemonade stand was a direct threat to order. Today lemonade, tomorrow black market popsicles. I alone see the danger. I tried to warn them, but they just laughed me off. They think it's funny. Well, it's not funny. There's nothing funny about an out-of-control free market. What if she starts selling snacks? This could go on for days. I can't let this slide. They're gonna be sorry when I call the cops. Cops won't do anything. They love lemonade. Maybe I should write a strongly worded letter to the judge. No, the judge loves lemonade. Maybe I should run for HOA president. Yes, then I can ban lemonade and take away those silly little signs. No more lemonade stands, no more free market. It will be a quiet neighborhood once again. Yes, I can do it. But for now, it's still hot, and Karen's still mad. So I'm gonna end it here. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more stories like these, please stay tuned. Thank you. December arrived, and with it, holiday cheer. Families strung up lights, set out reindeer, some even went all out with inflatables. It was a neighborhood tradition started by Karen. At least it had been until last year when she unleashed hell on her neighbors with a vengeance. Inflatables and excessive lighting are banned this year, she announced to the stunned silence of the neighborhood. I suggest you all read the fine print in your contracts. And just like that, Christmas was canceled. Well, not for long. 2 nights later, Karen's house exploded in lights. A 12-foot Santa Claus bobbed on the roof, lit candles flickered in every window, music even blasted, synchronized to the flashing lights, accompanied by a rotating snow machine projecting falling snow onto the lawn. You could see Karen from inside the house, dancing wildly, eyes shining with manic glee. The neighbors, however, were less than impressed. She looks like she's on something, someone whispered. Looks like we have a Grinch living in a Whoville, another replied bitterly. The adults sipped their cocoa, but soon a crowd of children gathered, pointing with envy at the spectacle before them. That was when Dan C. had an idea. Every night after that, he and his son set up a projector in the home across the street and played The Grinch Who Stole Christmas on the side of Karen's garage. As the movie played, the crowd grew, as did the number of empty cups for cocoa. By the time the Grinch had reformed, Karen hadn't even taken down her decorations. On the 5th night, the HOA showed up, citing safety concerns. But it was clear they were only there because of Karen's complaints. Soon enough, they were serving cocoa with marshmallows from the trunk of a car. And then disaster struck. The snow machine shot a thin sheet of ice into the driveway, which sent Karen sprawling on her back. That was the end of it. By the next day, the decorations were back up and the HOA had disappeared. We don't know what happened to them, but I think you can guess. Dan C. posted about the showdown on social media, and the whole neighborhood pitched in to bring him up to speed on all the juicy gossip he missed. It turns out Mrs. Patel had had enough of Karen's crap and decided to fight back. She'd been taking screenshots of Karen's posts on Nextdoor, you know, the neighborhood app, and she shared them with Dan C. with the caption, "Did anyone else see Karen's ban on decorations?" Nextdoor thread, screenshots transcribed, Mrs. Patel. "Did anyone else see Karen's ban on decorations?" Melissa C. "She has a 12-foot Santa." Hypocrisy much? Dan C. "Projector's ready. Who's bringing cocoa?" Anonymous. Obviously, Karen. "Rules exist for a reason. Without them, society collapses." Reply from 14 neighbors. After that, the comments got real ugly, real fast. Some people suggested Dan play the national anthem on repeat, while others suggested he ask Karen to start her own HOA. Someone said they'd pay good money to put a Karen in front of a train. Now, that comment was deleted, but not before someone took a screenshot and made a meme out of it. Dan's post ended up going viral, and there were even calls for a sequel. But unfortunately, we haven't found those yet. If you have, please leave a link in the comments. We need more of this in our lives. One Saturday, Karen appeared in the cul-de-sac with a tape measure. By noon, half the neighborhood had $300 fines for incorrect mailbox height. The fines were due Monday, and if they weren't paid by then, the HOA would pull a credit report and put a lien on their house. It was shocking, but nobody was more shocked than Karen because by Friday the whole neighborhood was about to rise up in what would become known as the Mailbox Mutiny. But before we get to the mutiny, let's check in with the HOA board. Is Karen actually following protocol? Well, let's find out. According to Robert's Rules of Order, here are the steps to amending the CC&Rs. Step 1. Give notice of the proposed change. Step 2. Draft the proposed change. Step 3. Vote on the proposed change at a duly noticed meeting. Did Karen do all that? Well, according to our own HOA meeting minutes, let's have a look. Does this say the word mailbox anywhere? Nope. Ah, here it does. Agenda item, mailbox height. What happened after this is stamped deferred to next meeting. Well, that's where we pick up on June. It says, Karen demanded that the board address the issue at the next HOA meeting. She argued that other HOAs in the area had mailbox restrictions, and we should too. After some discussion, the board agreed to add the issue to the agenda of the next meeting. Then on July, it says, Karen continued to press the issue of mailbox height. At one point, she tried to distribute a petition to the assembled members, but the board confiscated it. The meeting descended into chaos when Karen accused the board of illegally confiscating her petition. The board president gavelled Karen into silence and recessed the meeting until order could be restored. The meeting reconvened with order restored. A motion was made and seconded to table any discussion of mailbox height until the next meeting. The motion carried. Then on August, it says, the board heard a report from Karen on mailbox heights throughout the neighborhood. After further discussion, a motion was made and seconded to defer action on the matter of mailbox height until the next meeting. The motion carried. So that brings us to September. It says, the board received a letter from a county inspector disallowing any HOA regulation of mailbox height. The letter explained that mailbox height is regulated by state law, and the federal government has preemption over state law in this area. The letter concluded by saying that the county would not take any action based on an HOA mandate. The board discussed the implications of the inspector's letter and voted to rescind the notices of violation. Then it says, Karen attempted to introduce a resolution declaring mailbox height to be non-conforming use and therefore not an issue for the HOA going forward. The board would not entertain the resolution, claiming that it violated Robert's Rules of Order. Discussion ensued, and a motion was eventually made and seconded to remove all mention of mailbox height from the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. The motion carried. The board instructed the property manager to draft an amendment to delete the offending language from the CCRs. The property manager reported that he had received the executed amendment back from Karen, and he filed it with the county recorder's office. So, good news, everyone. All fines were rescinded. Mailbox height is no longer an HOA concern. And furthermore, Karen saved the day. But wait a minute. What's this? On October, it says, at an emergency meeting called by the board, it came to light that the amendment to the CCRs was forged. Karen claimed that several members had asked her to sign the document for them so they could go on vacation. Karen also admitted that she added her own signature to the document without the board's permission. The board confiscated the tape measure and instructed Karen to write an apology letter to each member of the board. The board then voted to rescind the prior vote deleting mailbox height from the CCRs. The board then voted to make Karen pay the full cost of preparing and recording the amendment. The board then voted to fine Karen $1,000 for attempting to circumvent the board. Discussion ensued regarding whether or not the board could legally revoke the fines that were previously issued. The board voted to revoke all fines and penalties previously levied against any member of the association. The board president announced that he would donate his honorarium for the year toward a neighborhood mailbox decorating contest. A motion was made and seconded to adjourn. The motion carried. And that's when the neighbors decided to hold the mailbox parade chanting 4244, mailboxes forevermore. And that is the end of Chapter 4. What lessons can we take away from this crazy HOA tale? Well, for one, even if your HOA has a history of doing nothing, don't assume that they won't enforce a rule just because it seems petty. If they start down that road, sometimes they won't stop till they run you over. And second, if your HOA does do something crazy, don't assume that talking to them will solve the problem. Sometimes you just need to fight fire with fire. That's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode of HOA Tales. We have more coming up. Also, if you want to hear more stories like this, check out my podcast. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Previously on the clipboard, Karen tried to fine 82-year-old Harold Jenkins $500 because his brand new wheelchair ramp was unsightly. Harold built the ramp after his hip surgery so he could get to his front door. But Karen said he needed a permit, and without one, she was going to fine him $500. She told him to tear it down, and he said no. So now they were taking their fight to the neighborhood board. As the chapter opens, we see Harold standing before the board pleading his case. "Without that ramp, I'm trapped," he says. Karen sneered. "Rules are rules," she says. Just then, the inspector stood up. "Actually, Ms. Whitmore, you're violating federal law. The Americans with Disabilities Act protects accessibility," he says, looking at Harold, "and this ramp is not only legal, it's a necessity for Mr. Jenkins," he says. He turned back to Karen. "So, if you have no other objections, the ramp will be approved," he says. The board members all voted to approve the ramp. It was unanimous. Join us for a block party this Saturday at 2 p.m. Free lemonade, a ramp ribbon cutting, and a mailbox decorating contest. We'll also have a holiday lights preview. All the decorations are optional, but remember, the more festive, the better. This Saturday, let's show Karen what freedom looks like. Let's show Karen what freedom never looked so festive. Saturday arrived and the neighborhood showed up. There were a few mailboxes, but most people had gone all out. Some houses had entire light displays. Others had giant bows on their mailboxes. Many had signs that read things like "Karen Who" or "No More Dictator," and a couple had old rotary dial phones. You know, the ones that made the old clickety-clack sound? "They were for Karen," she answered. Harold had put up a sign that read, "Welcome to the Neighborhood Watch." Below that was a picture of a smiling Harold pushing his walker into the sunset. Karen hated it. But when she looked around, she saw that everyone else seemed pretty happy. Even Martha and Agnes, who were normally stuck in their garage making weird noises, had come out. Their mailbox was adorned with tiny lights that flashed in time to holiday music. For once, Karen didn't have the heart to ruin everyone's fun. Instead, she went home, poured herself a cup of tea, sat by her window and glared at the party. She still had power. She was still feared. And maybe that was enough. But as the weeks went on, the decorations came down. The lemonade was forgotten, and the ramp became a permanent fixture in the neighborhood. It was a beautiful fixture. Every morning, Harold would roll down the ramp, greet his neighbors, and take his place on the board.